So Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf said he is willing to take Gaza refugees, and there's pressure from Egypt for the UK to do the same. Some would say it's our moral duty, of course.
So would you welcome a Gaza refugee into your home? We did so with Ukrainian refugees. We're joined by GB News' own Nigel Farage to discuss this. Nigel, your thoughts. What do you make of Humza Yousaf's comments that Scotland is open to refugees from Gaza?
Well, it might be for him, but I don't suppose for one moment it is the majority of Scottish people. I mean, look, since the Brexit referendum, we've taken in over 500,000. They've come from Syria, they've come from Afghanistan, they've come from Hong Kong, they've come from Ukraine. And we keep being told, well, these are exceptional circumstances. Well, here's yet another exceptional circumstance. So firstly, in terms of sheer numbers, I think we just got to say enough's enough. And secondly, isn't it interesting that Egypt won't take any refugees from Gaza? Do you know why? Because they don't want to import terrorism into Egypt, just as Saudi Arabia didn't take a single person after the Syrian conflicts. So if their neighbours are not prepared to take any, I frankly don't see why we should do so. And, you know, when you get this morning an independent report, a line to the Home Office with independent, says we already have a problem of integration being poor because of mass migration. Well, how many more people do we want marching on the streets of London, demonstrating? There is actually a cultural element to this that I think is very important. So we've always been a very generous country, but if the rest of the Arab states aren't prepared to help, why on earth should we?
Nigel, I think it's really important as well to point out that most Muslims who live in this country are peaceful, they are kind people, they don't wish any harm on other people. But we have failed, perhaps, to recognise a sort of existential threat, you might say, of radical extremist Muslim jihads, and the threat that they pose to a Western way of life here. Who would you hold culpable for that, which could at best be perhaps naivety, maybe, if we're being generous? Who do you lay the blame? Blair, to some degree?
Yeah, not your viewers. Not your viewers. The Labour and Conservative parties who lie to the British public at every, and it's a strong word, but I mean it, they lie to the British public at every general election, telling them numbers coming into Britain, sheer numbers coming into Britain, will be under control and will go down. And we're now at record levels of legal net migration, huge numbers, as I've said already, of refugees coming since 2016. And that's before you even start to talk about the young men from very different cultures crossing the English Channel. The first duty of a British government is to put the safety and security of the country and its own people first. And if you allow millions of people in who come from cultures that are very different from ours, with whom we have very little in common, it's no surprise that we've got these massive problems of integration.
Oh, Nigel, I just want to ask you whether you believe politicians have forgotten who they're working for. Surely, when it comes to immigration policy, it should be about what the British people want and need, and national security should be top of the government's agenda. For someone like Humza Yousaf, it appears that he is more concerned about supposed international humanitarian duties, but not really necessarily about what the Scottish people want.
Look, I mean, frankly, there is no issue on which our main political parties all around the UK and the populace are further apart. I can promise you, if there was a national referendum held on how many people should come to Britain legally, on what we should do with those that come illegally, and how many people we should take to war zones around the world, we would get a very different result to that is produced by the Westminster Parliament and indeed the Scottish Parliament.
Nigel, we've been debating this morning the relative merits of Rishi Sunak being out there, the cost of him going there to the British taxpayer, but also to the Israelis who are having to keep him safe while he's there, and the benefit that he might bring on that trip. Where do you stand on it?
Well, cost is a very marginal point here. I mean, we are at a moment where there is a real danger of major escalation in the Middle East, which could profoundly affect the lives of all of us around the world. I think it's right that Rishi Sunak. I'm very surprised how little has been said about the British citizens that have been killed, or should I say murdered, and the British citizens that are still being held hostage. It's almost as if we've forgotten about these people. Well, I certainly haven't. And I absolutely hope that top of Sunak's list is finding out what the plan is to extract our people who are being held hostage right now. I understand a detachment of the SAS is on its way, but also worth noting that the Americans yesterday, well, Biden's always a bit jumpy and stumbly, but he was perfectly clear that American intelligence said that the bombing of the hospital came from a misfired Hamas rocket. Absolutely clear. That's what the American intelligence believes, and that's now actually what most of the world believes. And yet Rishi Sunak refused to be drawn on that, refused to say earlier on, look, let's be clear, this was a Hamas misfire. And I wonder why he's running away from that. Is it that he fears even bigger street protests on the cities of our country?
Yes, well, Nigel, earlier we spoke to human rights lawyer Ivan Sampson about the question of whether we should take in refugees from Gaza. Have a listen to this and then can you react to what he says for us?
If somebody's a genuine refugee and wants to claim asylum here, we should have safe routes to do that. Look, Lebanon has 22% of its population as refugees. We have 0.6%. It's just a complete lie to say we've been overrun with refugees. It's just simply not true.
OK. Well, go on, Nigel, your reaction to that.
Well, we're not Lebanon. We are the United Kingdom. We have, look at it. We're putting people on barges. We're filling up over 400 hotels around the country. If Ivan Sampson is saying we don't have a problem with housing people, whether they're genuine refugees or people illegally crossing the channel, then frankly, he's in cloud cuckoo land. And I think all through the centuries, there is no country in the world who has actually got a finer record of genuinely helping those in. We've done more than our fair share over the course of the last few years. Enough is enough. And Ivan, if you listen to the UNHCR, there are up to 80 million people around the world displaced. How many millions does Ivan think should come? I'd love to know the answer.
Yeah. OK.
They never have an answer to that.
No, it's always one that's slightly dodged. But Nigel, thank you so much.